What evil lurks in the hearts of men? The shadowed circle knows.
Hello and welcome back to this damn idealistic crusade. In this video, I'm going to talk about another wonderful Kickstarter book project from the Shadowed Circle fan magazine. This is a 50th anniversary, slightly expanded and updated version of the classic reference book Gangland's Doom by Frank Eisgruber Jr., who originally published this in the mid-1970s, and this was actually the first major study of the Shadow, but also the first major study in single book volume about a single hero character, specifically one from the pulp magazines. So this has a number of distinctions and was also an invaluable reference source for a lot of the other pulp historians, especially Will Murray, who of course wrote his own fan magazines and has written many books about the Shadow and of course many articles and actually corresponded with the author. So he has written a wonderful new foreword for this book and talks about how big of an influence this reference book was on him and his own reference works. So this is one of those key reference works in a particular field or genre that became invaluable for everyone who came afterwards. This, of course, was obviously long before the internet was at everyone's fingertips and you could easily access all kinds of different information, but it's still difficult to find out specifics about the pulp magazine heroes in terms of the inner workings of the stories and how they interconnect and about all the various side characters and specific details. So this is still an invaluable book and also one that's really great for long-timers and newcomers alike, as it's extraordinarily easy to read through, an enjoyable read, so you don't have to have a background in the Night of Darkness, you don't have to know any and all of the allies and major supervillains, but everything is nicely laid out and broken up into individual sections, so it's easy to follow. But it's also a great reference for us Shadow fans because, sometimes it's hard to keep track of all 300 plus pulp novels, especially, if you're like me, most of us haven't gotten to read all of them yet, so it makes it even more enticing when you read a wonderful reference book like this that explains more details that maybe you just haven't gotten to yet in terms of the novels you haven't read yet. Now, if you decide to pick up a copy, you have a choice between the hardcover edition and the paperback volume, and like the previous compendium book, you have a choice between different unique cover art designs depending on which version you go for. Each contains the same information in terms of the same page count and the same wonderful book inside, but you do get the benefit of being able to choose which cover artwork design you want. And like most books, the hardcover version is a little bit fancier in the printing, so you do get your money's worth if you spend a little bit more to get the hardcover version. So this is the artwork for the hardcover version, another beautiful piece by the artist Joe Booth, and then there's a nice sort of wraparound effect going onto the spine with a beautiful rendering of the Shadow, complete with the blood red lined cape. So in essence, it really does have a wraparound effect, and this is a really beautiful looking cover. The paperback volume is a little bit smaller in terms of dimensions, but is otherwise exactly the same. We have another beautiful art piece here with a different style that sets this edition apart. So if you love collecting multiple covers, then you might want to pick up both. And then it has the similar spine and also the same beautiful rear cover. So it has that same sort of wraparound cover effect. And don't think the beautiful illustrations don't continue inside, because this book is full of further beautiful Joe Booth illustrations, and these are also in the paperback version. So basically you're getting the same incredible book with beautiful new illustrations in both versions. It's just that the hardcover version's a little bit fancier and has a unique artwork for the cover. Here's the table of contents where you can see each chapter is devoted to a particular section or element of the Shadow's world, like any great reference book, and it's very nicely laid out, so it's easy to follow and read along with, even if you have no experience reading a Shadow Pulp magazine. We also have the new 50th anniversary material in terms of the new Will Murray introduction, And if that weren't enough, there's also a new short interview at the end of the book with the original author reflecting on the development and writing of this book, and then the slight update that was done in 2007, which quickly went out of print, and then what it's like looking at the book again and making a couple slight updates for this 50th anniversary reprinting. And if all of that were not enough, you get to the further illustrations at the start of every chapter, which are specific to that actual chapter in terms of the information being covered. So here we have Joe Booth's beautiful image from the rear cover in black and white, with a beautiful, highly detailed rendering of the Shadow's true identity of Kent Allard, the famous aviator long thought dead. And each of the chapters has a piece like this that all match, all highly detailed, and it's just a wonderful touch. The next one is, of course, the Shadow and some of his more famous guises in terms of the various disguises and personalities that he assumes to move through the world unnoticed and unobserved. Here's a painting of some of the most famous and illustrious of the Shadow's agents. So part of the fun of reading this edition is getting to marvel over the artwork and seeing which elements of that particular chapter are incorporated into the wonderful imagery. And of course, if you have the allies, you have to have some of the iconic villains as well. So here are 3 of the most famous supervillains, including, of course, Shiwan Khan and the Voodoo Master. The book concludes with an appendix of all of the Shadow novels listed in chronological release order, plus the indications of the ones that were written by other authors outside of Walter B. Gibson, who wrote the vast majority of all of the Shadow novels. And then there's also, in terms of the new extra material, Will Murray includes some of the vintage correspondence that he had with Eisgruber in terms of when the book had just come out. So these are vintage, originally typewritten letters that were sent back and forth. So it's a really fun insight into 2 super Shadow fans talking at that time, long before the days of the internet when it was very easy to do this sort of stuff. And then here is the concluding new 2025 interview with Eisgruber Jr. about this particular work and how he feels about it all these years later. And then lastly, there's a nice advertisement for the magazine itself and the 2 indispensable Will Murray novels that finally team up The Night of Darkness with The Man of Bronze. So all in all, this book runs about 200 pages in its current printing. As I said, the book was previously reprinted in 2007 in a limited version that went quickly out of print and is quite pricey on the used market. And of course, the original 1970s printing is very uncommon and can be quite pricey. So this is a really welcome addition to anyone's Shadow library, as you get the full text beautifully reproduced, plus the editions that were done in 2007, plus a few new editions, and some new wonderful extras, plus an interview with the author in either beautiful paperback or hardcover editions, both of which are far less expensive than trying to track down one of the past versions that don't have as much material. And you get beautiful illustrations throughout that are just fantastic. So I can't recommend this highly enough if you're a Shadow fan, but also this is a great book if you're a newcomer to the Shadow, or if you're just curious to know more about the Night of Darkness and why the Shadow casts such a shadow over every superhero character that came afterwards, especially in the field of comic books. So this is a great crash course for newcomers to the Shadow and a wonderful book to have on the shelf if you're a fan of The Night of Darkness. Now, the book is currently available on the Shadowed Circle website or on their Amazon storefront. But if you did the Kickstarter, they did have a couple nice extras and things, and so they nicely tucked in some of the printed ones for me. So there's a really lovely bookmark with the artwork from the hardcover compendium and a really nice logo for the website. They also took some of the artwork that was made for the covers of some of the magazine issues and redid them in these really cool sort of playing card reprint cards. that have a nice sort of printing effect on them to give them a nice sort of gleam. And then on the back, you get the playing card motif, but now with the shadow himself it reflected on both sides. So it's a really cool touch. It almost makes these look a bit like tarot cards in a way. It's a really cool thing. I thought these would be neat when I saw them listed on the Kickstarter, but they are so much more impressive in person. And then some like this. This is the artwork for the wonderful issue 7 of the magazine that's currently out. But this was one of the ones that has a nice sort of hollow foil finish to it. So if you choose to back one of their Kickstarter projects later on and you're wondering what the printed materials are actually like in person, they look like this. Again, you can see that wonderful sort of hollow finish. Here's the really cool art from the paperback version of the compendium with the Shadow and Margot on the run. And then the really fun, hyper-stylized art featuring the Shadow in a completely different form. And lastly, we have the wonderful art from the paperback volume. So overall, this is a wonderful effort from the Shadowed Circle fan magazine. They always do a wonderful job with their Kickstarter projects. It's just one of those incredible fan efforts that is a labor of love, but it's a labor of love that you feel on every page. And when they do a Kickstarter project, it's always something that has meaning. They do it because it's something they feel is worthwhile and important and also worth your money as a Shadow fan. And this is one of the truly important works of preserving the history of the character and was long out of print, and even the last version has been out of print for a great number of years. So this is a really wonderful thing to be able to have on your shelf. Again, whether you're a new or old Shadow fan, it doesn't matter. It's still a great reference work to have, and this is the definitive release of it in a beautiful new version by the Shadowed Circle. So if you're at all interested, or if you're a Shadow fan, definitely head over to the Shadowed Circle website and support this if you wish. It's a wonderful effort, as always, from them, and I do look forward to the next issues of the magazine and also any further Kickstarter projects they may have underway. So as always, I hope my babblings about the world of the Night of Darkness and the wonderful Shadowed Circle magazine have been at least somewhat fun and informative. I'll have links to the Shadowed Circle website and their Amazon page in the description below. And I cannot recommend this release highly enough, as it is a phenomenal reference work that is one of the foundational works of pulp scholarship, as it's now celebrating its 50th anniversary. So as always, please do keep supporting incredible fan efforts like this and all of the efforts of the pulp historians and pulp reprint publishers who are trying their best to keep the world of the pulp magazines alive. Keep reading pulps, and as always, thank you ever so much for watching.